Well, I've been at home trying to monitor the elections that went on at the Accra Sports Stadium. And I think at the end of the day, some of us were not surprised by the outcomes. Take the position of the national chairman. This is somebody who has been fighting, wanting this position for the past 20 years. So if you look at his track record, it means he's invested a lot of time, energy, and some resources. And by so doing, he's been able to also visit the delegates, interacted with them. So some of us were not very surprised. But we're surprised at the margin. He got almost 4,000, while the second candidate, Asamoah Boateng, got 1,800 or so. But with Professor Miyakunfi, some of us were not surprised at the result that he got, because if you listen to his own region, some of them saw him as a very divisive personality, especially when it came to the creation of the Bono East region, and they accused him of very exclusive politician. If you are not from Techima, he doesn't want to deal with you. So from his own region, people voted against him. So for the chairmanship position, I think some of us were not very surprised looking at the outcome of the results. But the general secretary position too, John Boadu, well, some of us, if you talk to the MPP grassroots, he was never in the office. He was not available. His interactions with the grassroots was very abysmal. But he felt he was going to use the incumbency advantage, because he had all the resources and he had the passive machinery behind him. Even the Jubilee House was behind John Boadu. But at the end of the day, the delegate has spoken. And my information is that he gave a lot of money. They took the money and refused to vote for you. So this tells you about the level of sophistication of the Ghanaian electorate now. You cannot use money to buy your way through an election. If it were so, John Boadu would have won. But this should be a signal to all political activists or political players that money is important, but it's not the ultimate. So this is what I would say for the general secretary position. But my checks on the record of Justin Kodua, he's been the CEO of the Youth Employment Agency. His own workers complain that he's a very exclusive person. If you don't belong to his camp, he doesn't want to engage you. Maybe he could do that at the National Youth Employment Agency, but as the general secretary of a party, you cannot do that. You have to deal with everybody, whether they are in your camp, against you, for or whatever, against or whatever you think about them. So the leadership style he exhibited as the CEO cannot be transplanted to the position of a general secretary. If he does that, he will fail. If he does that, he will fail. So it's just a word of caution that what he exhibited at the National Youth Employment Agency, he cannot bring that to the party level.
So the information you are getting is that when he has been there for a while, he will now have to resign and take over the position of the general secretary. You're saying that when his period there, he's practiced a camp mentality.
Yeah, I have very good friends of mine who are working directly under him. And they complain, if you don't belong to his camp, he even ignores you, some of his deputies. So that mindset that he developed there, the leadership style that he exhibited, I think if he wants his party to succeed, then he has to change his style. Because that one, you were dealing with people who were mainly young people. But now you are going to deal with the whole MPP structure, where we have old people, we have young people, very mature people, more intelligent, more experienced, more exposed than you. So if you want to practice that camp mentality, it will not help. It will not help him, and it will not help his party. So coming to the position of the national organizer. You see, Henry Nana Boakye won because he had a lot of resources and he started earlier. But if you look at the vote margin between Nana Boakye and Titus Glover, I was surprised, because from the very onset, Nana B simply underrated Titus. Some of the comments that were going on, and he just dismissed him that, oh, he can. But if you look at the vote margin, I remember Titus won in 13 out of the 16 regions. But for Ashanti, where they had almost 41 constituencies, Titus could have won. He won 13 out of the 16 regions. He started very late. He didn't have a lot of resources. But look at the vote margin. And I must also add that if you talk to some of the people on the ground, but for the incumbency advantage and the resources that Nana B had, he would have lost. Because some say he's too abrasive. His language, his human relations is terrible. And this morning I was listening to Titus. He was asked whether he would be prepared to work under Nana B. He said no. So they need a lot of patching up to do. And Nana B, if he wants his party to succeed, he must change his lifestyle. And people complain that when people bring any complaint to him, any report, he doesn't even listen to the other side of the story. But I'm surprised a lawyer is exhibiting these tendencies. Because one principle of natural justice is to listen to the other side. But a lot of the people on the ground are complaining that he doesn't listen. He just listens to one side and then draws his conclusion. So he should take that on board. This free advice that I'm giving him. So far, I think as far as the women organizer is concerned, Kate, we all knew that she was going to win. And the youth organizer too, we also tipped Abanga. But you see, because Abanga associated himself with John Boadu, who was going out, people extended that dislike for John Boadu and then extended it to Abanga. So that's why he also lost. Because he started quite early, almost 2-3 years back. But because he associated himself with a losing horse, it affected him. So in all, I think it's been a very successful Congress. But what I have problem is the timing. They were supposed to start at 9 o'clock, but they did not start until 3 o'clock, which I think is too bad.
Why is it that bad? Because sometimes there could be circumstances that will make it difficult for them to start on time and may account for the delay.
You see, proper organization, you plan in advance. You put contingency measures in place. In case this happens, what is the other alternative? You can't keep people from 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock. Look at the effect it is having on productivity. Look at the number of people who, when maybe somebody wanted to go by 12 o'clock, I'll cast my vote, go back to my work, and earn some money, contribute to our economy. But you kept the people there for almost 4 hours, just waiting, because someone has not done his work well. Please, we cannot accept this. We cannot accept it, because if we want to increase productivity, these are the things we cannot ignore. So that is where I have my problem with, because you don't keep all the people waiting, the 6,000 people, if everybody wasted 4 hours. 4 hours multiplied by 6,000 people. You quantify that into productivity, and you know how much you are getting. These are the things that are holding our progress back as a people.
Well, I realize you took each candidate to raise issues about some of the things you are hearing about them that they need to correct. But the group that was in power, the executives that are currently passing on, some of them will retain their positions, others will shift a little, was seen as establishment candidates. The status quo wanted them to be there. And the status quo still wanted John Boadu to be there. John Boadu lost. They also, I don't know what they feel about in team, but it seems they are not particularly opposed to him. The group that you have currently, what do you make of them? Are they establishment people, or would you see a much more indie party that is independent and able to if necessary, take on government?
Well, I think, you see, the people we have now, if you look at the history of Intim and his relationship with the president, they were very close until they got to Tamale, where the then candidate realized that Intim was shifting more towards the Kufuor camp. So the then candidate dropped Intim, who was his close confidant. But I don't know whether they find the differences. But even Koforidua, Intim lost because Freddie Blair had the support of the presidency. I remember when we come on there, we just go there to watch. And we were hearing that, oh, at Koforidua, the refrain was, oh, Park no son yet. Park no son yet. Because Intim was on the way to victory. Last minute, a directive went out to all government appointees, ministers, CEOs, deputy CEOs, that they should all go and vote for Freddie Blair. And then some monies were also brought in. So it changed the dynamics at Koforidua. That was why Intim lost. Because initially, to the last minute, Intim was leading. Until this Jubilee House thing happened, and then the whole dynamics changed. So, if you look at Intim, he's somebody who is very independent-minded. And he stayed outside, worked outside, got a lot of international exposure. He's very independent-minded. So, I don't think he will be somebody who would want to toe the line of government necessarily. And what I'm picking from the ground is that from the Intim camp, that they are even pushing for a reshuffle immediately.
A reshuffle in government?
Yes, because they believe that it is the party that gave birth to government. So government must listen to the party. You see, the struggle going on is that, look, in our part of the world, Africa, access to power means access to resources. Agreed. So that if you put somebody as a minister, it means he may have access to some resources. And he may also be able to use that position to help his people. So that if you come, you appoint people to remain in power as ministers for 8 years, it means you've limited the base of spreading the resources and then the influence to other people. So if you realize what President Kufuor did, the first 2 years, he had made some reshuffle, brought new group of people to also come and also have access to those resources and be able to help their people. But in this case, if someone is going to remain in power for 8 years as a minister, it means you've narrowed down the base. And a lot of MPP people are complaining. So my signals are that Intim and his camp and his group, they want to call for a reshuffle. Because first and foremost, most of the ministers are tired. And we also have something we call facial fatigue. People are tired of looking at their faces, seeing the same faces for the past 8 years. And apart from that, it makes them too comfortable and complacent. Because you know that whatever the case, they are not going to change it. So this is what is going on the ground. So prepare yourself for some power struggle within the MPP, between government and party.
And it was exactly that, if you listen to the president's speech, one of the things he talked about was what he saw as discord being sown at the time when, I think he was talking about Paul Afoko Kobna Japan, where General Secretary, National Chairman General Secretary, and how come Freddie Blair had to come in among others. How should this be handled in a way not to, because the president will feel quite powerful enough to say, I may be in the position to attempt what I did to Kobna Japan, what they call it, Afoko. If I could do that in opposition, why not the presidency if he feels the party structure is antagonizing him?
You see, he cannot do that because now there's a lot of resentment on the ground. Because people feel that they work for the party, they've been alienated, they've been sidelined, and The president is aware of this development on the ground. So what he did while in opposition, he cannot do it now, because now the party people, just that most of them are not talking. So they are just waiting for the opportunity. And if the president does not do his calculation well, and he wants to do what he did while in opposition, it may explode. I'm not a prophet of doom, but that is the reality on the ground. From the intelligence we are picking. So they are being very cautious. Now you just realize that recently Gabi Ochiridakong, the deputy prime minister, has put up a post that the president will do a reshuffle if necessary. I don't know whether you've come across that.
You call Gabi the prime minister?
Well, that is my candid opinion.
That he is prime minister of which country? Because we don't know the prime ministerial system yet.
Well, I know that. But at the level of influence he wields, and then before any government policy comes out, he's the first person to bring it out. So if he's not part of the inner circle, how does he get the information? So I'm making some deductions here.
Well, okay, so I listened to the General Secretary-elect, who says the job is to ensure they are able to break the 8. Are they in the position, are they capable of doing it?
Well, you know, in politics, one day could be as long as 1 year. So, you see, anybody can shout any slogan. In politics, sloganeering is allowed and even sometimes encouraged, because it helps to ginger your supporters, to give them some hope, to give them some, to encourage your supporters. But the real work is on the ground. So let's see what this new leadership will bring. But from where I sit now, there's a lot of despondency at the grassroots level within the members of the MPP, because people felt very disappointed, sidelined, and even let out. So let's see what new leadership will do. And let's wait. Before I make any predictions, I'll wait for the next 2-3 months. Look at what they are going to do. Look at their initial steps before I can make it. But it's not going to be an easy walk. Because remember, they are fighting against a very formidable opposition. Very formidable opposition. So breaking the 8 is easier said than done. So let's wait to see what will come out of this new leadership that the MPP has put in place. But it's going to be a very, 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 very hard electioneering as we go into 2024.
I'm wondering what you want to see to convince you that there's the first few actions you would like to see from them that will convince you that this new group of executives are capable of doing what is necessary at this time.
Well, what I want to see is that they should sit down with the president. You see, the party under Freddie Blair has become another extension of government. Under Freddie Blair, the party was so powerless. I have some friends who were telling me that, well, after the elections, they saw the general secretary, that now I've gone general secretary. Who told them that, well, Upa Juma and the co-presidency? And they said, well, Mr. General Secretary, we didn't campaign on the basis that we were looking for jobs from the presidency. We campaigned as a political party. So you are the one we know. So you should be in a vehicle that will help us have access to some of these jobs. He said, well, if you want, go to the presidency. But I know from a very reliable source that the new executive, they are going to insist that the right thing is done. But first and foremost, by calling for a reshuffle to bring in new group of people so that the privileges and advantages that go with appointment should also be broadened and then extended to other people who equally contributed during the elections. So this is the first thing I'm hearing that they want to do. But whether they will have the courage to do it as they are claiming, we are yet to see.
Doc, thank you very much for speaking to us.
Thank you very much, too. Have a nice day.
You too, Doc. Dr. Anane Gyinde is a lecturer